you had an interesting progression into Hollywood. Probably, I guess one of the most famous things that I read was your role with Clint Eastwood. How did you end up acting in a major movie like that?
Yeah, so I had a friend from New York that he was 9 years old, Perry Rosen. He was like, and I met him at the bodybuilding gym. So because the weight room at the high school wasn't very good, and I was in high school, and I wanted, like, my next thought was I was advancing more than just the weights that I had in my basement, and I thought, what can I do? And somebody said, there's a bodybuilding gym in the next town over, Rab's Gym in Lynbrook, and I got myself over there. I didn't even have a car. I had a bummer ride or whatever it took to get over there, and I joined. And it was a converted supermarket, had a karate dojo in the back and bodybuilding in the front, and no cardio equipment. It was just a hardcore, and I loved it. It smelled funny. I loved everything about it, right? And it was full of guys that worked really, really hard. Guys in their like late 20s and 30s and 40s, and there was maybe 2 women, members. There was no women, and it was just perfect for me. And I met this guy named Perry Rosen, and he had a good physique. He was a little bit older. We became fast friends, and we always stayed in touch. And then when I went away to college, and we stayed in touch even before cell phones, where it was like a big deal to call your friends up. And then he, around the time of my senior year, he had gone through some things. And by the way, so Perry owned a small business in New York City, and he said to me, he would always say to me, but really, I'm an actor. And I did this off-Broadway play, and I just shot a commercial for Sprite. And I'm going to make this thing go. I'm going to make it work. And I go, okay. But all the years kept ticking by, and he was barely ever working. And then something happened with his business, and he goes, I'm going to, I feel like God's telling me something. I lost my small business, and he had just 1 or 2 friends in Los Angeles, and he goes, it's time for me to get out of New York, and I'm going to take the shot. I'm going to go to Hollywood and make it as an actor. And he did. He moved, and he was also a personal trainer. And so we stayed in touch, and when the season ended, my first season in the NFL ended, he said, come out and visit me. And I was playing with the Bengals. I didn't want to live in Cincinnati. I was single. There was nothing holding me there. All I had to do was work out wherever I was. Off-season workouts were not nearly organized in the NFL back then. It was we'll see you in 6 months, just be in shape. And so I went to Los Angeles, and he showed me one of his auditions, and he took me to an audition. He says, here's how it works. And he said, you could do this, Pete. You could do this. And I said, really? I never thought about it like that. He goes, look, I'm like, he pulled the curtain back. He's like, no, this is how you become. This is how you be a professional actor. And he goes, man, I got my SAG card. I can help you do it. And that was it, And he got me interested. And I got an agent, and I was very fortunate right away. And I think it was my second audition. I booked a national commercial for Ford trucks, and I got my SAG card. As people who know about acting know, that's a big deal. And I was making a little money, and I had a SAG card. I would just keep going to the gym. We worked out together every day. And then I booked another commercial, and it started to happen for me. And my friend Perry's like, holy cow, I didn't know. What did I create? A monster? I didn't know. And then I got an audition, and my agent said they're being very secretive about this, but you got to drive over to the Warner Brothers lot. I'm like, where's that? He's like, it's over in Burbank, and figure it out. And I auditioned, and I walk into this room, and there's like maybe 120 guys that are like my size or bigger, because the script had read, Swede enters the room, 6'7", 285 pounds. Well, I'm 6'5" and 6'6.5", and at that time I was about 280. So I'm like, I don't know. And all kinds of just big guys, and they were auditioning everybody in town. But they didn't say who was in the movie or what the name of the movie was. I knew it was a military thing, and I auditioned. And I got a call back, which means another opportunity to audition again. This time they're going to put me on tape. And again, right now they whittled it down to about 20 gigantic guys, and I learned my lines with my friend Perry coaching me. And I found out, my agent calls me up 2 days later and he goes, man, you got that part. You won't believe this, man. You just got a part in a Clint Eastwood movie called Heartbreak Ridge. I said, get out of here. And it was like a dream come true. And so many movies are made in Hollywood. 99% of them go away after a few years. Even Clint Eastwood movies. Clint Eastwood's made something like 80 movies, and he's one of the biggest stars in history. But really, people only remember or talk about, or they even rerun maybe 7 or 8 of those movies, right? And there's 70 movies no one even talks about anymore. But Heartbreak Ridge, due to its military theme and its popularity, runs perennially. It's never stopped running. It's run all the time. I don't make much money from it. That's not the reason I make the point. But it's on TV all the time. Every Veterans Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, guarantee it's on. And it's just a movie that has forever associated me with the United States Marine Corps, and it's something I embrace. And it's made me, or I think I've always been a patriot, but it's solidified my position in some respects as, and I've had many Marines and I'll say to me, hey, I'm a Marine. I saw Heartbreak Ridge, and your character Swede motivated me and excited me to join the Marine Corps. I've got thousands of these messages, and all I can say is I'm humble. Thank you for your service. And I've had many Marines tell me, and I'm like, look, I can't, and I don't want that responsibility of claiming that I'm actually military. I make that very clear to people. I don't want any confusion. But I've had many Marines say to me, it's very thoughtful, like, many of us consider you like an honorary Marine. And that makes me feel very good. And I respect all armed services, but I have a special place for the Marine Corps.
Seems like you rubbed shoulders with a lot of big actors as well at the time. Like, is there any sort of interesting behind the closed doors stories that are worth sharing?
Well, my career, in some respects, I own it. When I was a young actor, I was luckier than I was talented, and then I actually learned how to act a little better, and it's always a work in progress. But and mostly now I shoot television commercials, but I'm auditioning all the time. And I was very fortunate when I was younger, because shortly after I worked with Clint Eastwood, I worked with Burt Reynolds, rest his soul. But he was he was one of the big stars in the world all through the 70s, early 80s. People think of Smokey and the Bandit and all these movies. And I don't know how many people knew this, but he played college football at Florida State. He's from the state of Florida. He was an All-American running back as a high school kid, and then he went to Florida State. And in fact, you can find footage of him in a Florida State game, running the ball down the field. But he had a terrible knee injury. And I actually met an NFL coach that was his teammate at Florida State. And that guy went on to be a coach later on. And I said, he goes, and this coach knew that I made not only a movie called Heat, but Burt Reynolds had a TV series called Evening Shade. It was a situation comedy, a sitcom, Evening Shade, ran in the 2000s. And so I'd worked with Burt a couple of times, and Burt loved to talk about football. He was really passionate about it. He was sorry that he had hurt his knee playing, when he was in college, and he felt like he had maybe a chance to make it in the NFL. He looked pretty darn good. And so that was a passion of his. And I always, so he was inspirational to me. And I'm like, well, Bert's a football player and he made it. I don't know if I'll ever be a star, but Bert went out of his way when he worked with me, because he directed both these projects also, to make sure that I had a lot of time, and he helped me prepare and rehearse. Generally speaking, as a professional actor, when you get hired, they expect you to know the lines perfectly, show up on time, hit the mark, say, roll the camera, and then do the scene, say, cut, and that's it, that's your job. And if they want you to do it again and again and again, you do it, and there's really not much conversation. That's the way 90% of Hollywood works. Burt Reynolds was like, Pete, let's take our time and let me help you with this. and it was like an acting lesson from a master. Yeah. So a very generous person, Burt Reynolds and Clint Eastwood. I still pinch myself. It was a long time ago, but I had that opportunity to learn from people at the top of their game, and because I have a mindset where I try to turn myself into a sponge, my heart, my brain, and absorb all that. It was a tremendous opportunity, and I learned from it. So I'm open to that. I think it's important to to be open to those experiences. It very similar to how I was able to learn from Howie Long and many others in the NFL. I was able to learn and continue to learn from some wonderful people in Hollywood.